Hi, good afternoon everybody. Hope you're enjoying the week so far. My name's Jackie Fitzsimons, I'm from OPSS. I'm not sure entirely how many we've got on the call today, but I'm just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping before I start the presentation. So you've probably heard this many times if you've been in the other sessions. If you are not speaking, could you keep your camera off and your microphone muted? We are recording the session and we'll share that with you post meeting. If you have any problems with your internet or your connection, you can see in the chat there's details of how you can rejoin. Feel a little bit like an air hostess here, giving you directions as to what to do. So please use the chat box and you're encouraged to put any comments or any thoughts on there, any questions, and we will be looking at that as we go through the presentation today. And there is a raise your hand function if you want to use that equally to use questions. So quite an informal session based on a bit of a recap of Better Business for All. It's quite useful sometimes to go back to basics, just to really think about why BBFA is important and why it's something that we would really advocate that you do if you're not already doing it. I'd just like to load my slides up if you just bear with me. This is the scary bit. So I don't know if anybody could just nod or say that they can see those. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, Jackie, we can see them.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm here with my colleague Paul Hobbs today from Horsham District Council. Paul is a real advocate of Better Business for All. He's an experienced practitioner, and he's also a champion of primary authority. So we're going to do this sort of two-handed. I'm going to go through the sort of fundamentals of Better Business for All, and then Paul's going to talk about the actual practical experience of his Better Business for All programme, and how that works in actual practice. So the kind of the remit really was Better Business for All Basics. So you kind of have to start really with what makes Better Business for All work, and the simple answer really is it's you. Regulators like working with people, they like talking to people, they like communicating to people, and they're solution focused, they like to help people. So all of that combined together is what a regulator is about. But Better Business for All is a bit more than that. So the model for Better Business for All is that it brings together the business support providers, such as growth hubs and other membership bodies in an area with regulators to support local economic priorities. And I'll just recap on the business support providers that will be in your regions and in your areas. So generally, Better Business for All programmes are aligned to local enterprise partnership areas, and they are the bodies which are made up of public and private partnerships of local authorities and businesses. And they help to determine local economic priorities around job creation and economic growth. Aligned to the local economic partnerships are something called growth hubs, and the growth hubs are that kind of face-to-face professional advice to businesses. They tend to have websites where they bring together all the business support in that area, so businesses can access it in one place. And generally they're the place really where they can signpost to all the other business support providers. So if I just go back here, so Better Business for All is a group of business support providers and regulators. But you could say, well, so what? Well, anybody could do that, anybody could bring those together. But the difference is it is actually where there is a desire to truly engage with businesses, to listen to business and actually understand a business perspective. So part of that is using the 5 strands along the side of the slide there. And when we go back to basics, programmes which are successful follow those 5 fundamental areas. So they are strategic in outlook, which means that they are getting together to look at what the value is and how they can actually support the economic growth in an area. And it is a strategic outlook, so they're looking at what's available and how they can use that resource wisely. It is local and it is aligned to those local economic partnership areas. it's growth focused, it's practical, so it's not talking about things, it's actually doing stuff which actually supports businesses, and it involves collaboration of those partners. So as well as the local enterprise partnerships and growth around the table in the Better Business for All programme, Chambers of Commerce, which is a network of businesses which provide support, practical support for businesses in an area. Federation of Small Businesses, the membership organisation which supports small businesses. And very, very importantly, and in a lot of programmes, what we see are local authority economic development teams. In all local authorities, economic development, and you'll have seen this through COVID, will be working around now at this point business. Oh, sorry, somebody started sharing. But can you see my slides?
No, they've gone.
Sorry, somebody started doing something to my presentation. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry about that. Technology is marvellous, isn't it? Okay, right. Right, I've just put a blocker on somebody trying to touch the slides. Okay, sorry about that. Right, so moving on. So if anybody was to ask me what the basics are for a Better Business for All programme, it has to be strategic, it's local, it's growth focused, it's practical, and it involves true collaboration between them. So generally in a Better Business for All programme, you will have a steering group where the governance of that partnership takes place. It's quite important because that also means there's some accountability, there's some sort of structure to what you're doing. In that steering group, once Better Business starts and that conversation starts, it very quickly becomes apparent that there'll be a set of common objectives or common goals. So with businesses, you as regulators want compliant businesses contribute to economic growth in an area. It's really as basic as that. There's usually an action plan. One size doesn't fit all, so programmes tend to do things slightly differently, but an action plan needs to be achievable. Sometimes what does happen is that partnerships are very, very ambitious, and that's great if you've got the resource and the ability to deliver that. But the best ones are where you get an action plan which is achievable and which can be delivered. And the best ones are where you do a small number of things really well, rather than have a really big ambitious programme which actually, you know, it's very difficult to deliver in practice, particularly with limited resources. So what I'm going to talk now very briefly about is the orange boxes along the side. So those are themes which run through successful programmes, and Better Business for All is successful where the steering group has actually got sight of these 5 things along the side. Now the boxes are sized there, but some of them, depending on your programme, you might need more emphasis on some than others. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time talking about those. So accountability is incredibly important. Successful partnerships have a governance structure which has some sort of reporting function with high level buy-in. That could be, depending on your area, it could be a chief executive group, or all too often it is actually a report into the local enterprise partnership. Generally, in local enterprise partnerships, you will find that you will have your local leaders, your elected members in that group. So that's actually a really good way for you to demonstrate the worth of the Better Business for All programme. It's really good for regulators to be seen in that forum because it's really good for their profile, and it's a very good way to demonstrate the value of what you do. Accountability is extremely important. The next one that's really important, and I would say that one is actually, if you wanted to look at the size of those orange boxes, that is probably one of the biggest boxes to achieve. So looking at culture tends to mean the way that a group of people do things. So if you truly want to do Better Business for All, the starting point is to examine the way things are done and questioning that from a business perspective as opposed from a regulator perspective. So regulators are really, really good at giving advice, but is it actually given in the best way for businesses? And is it the best way to achieve compliance? So part of the Better Business Fraud programme is actually really looking at regulatory feature. So just as an example, when an officer rocks up to a premises to carry out an inspection, what do you think that business is thinking? Are they thinking, oh wow, you know, welcome to come in? Or are they actually thinking, I'm really scared of you, you're going to prosecute me? Not now, really, I'm really busy. I can't really wait to tell you all about my dream business. Or actually, I'm really worried at this moment about how I pay my staff this week. So as for all of us, you know, there are lots of other things on the mind of that business, and you can't fix those financial problems. You can't fix some of those things. But part of Better Business for All is actually being mindful of that sort of background when you're actually carrying out your regulatory functions. And I'm just going to share with you something which was an absolute penny dropping moment for me around Better Business for All. And this is something that a business said to me many moons ago when I started my Better Business for All journey. And they talked about regulators being smiling assassins. So they come along and they're really friendly and they offer advice and they want to work with the business, but then actually they end up serving a notice of prosecuting you. And that's part of the job of a regulator. A part of the job of a regulator is to offer advice, but also to deal with non-compliance. But I guess that just made me really think about it from a business perspective. And that was really the start of me thinking about actually, you know, are there ways that we could interact better with businesses and actually understand and empathise with their position? Another example is I remember many moons ago going on a course where regulators were taught the cost of the things that they were asking businesses to do, and I was staggered by the cost of a fridge. You know, a commercial fridge was £1,000 or something, which, you know, sort of again resonated with me and made me think about business in a slightly different way. So working through Better Business for All is about working with those business support providers and actually starting to think about the best way to get to businesses and to achieve that compliance. So regulators are superb at communication. They truly are. They go into the professions that they go into because they want to do that. They really want to do that. But Better Business for All is actually delving into how that communication occurs. So in a recent business perception survey, 34% of businesses said that they didn't think regulators understood their business and how their business worked. And that's a perception. You know, it doesn't mean that's the case across the board, but it is just something that, again, that makes you think about what a business thinks about you when you do your regulation. So part of, for example, some of the things that have happened around Better Business is around how letters are used and how reports are used. And there was a try with the Food Standards Agency with some Better Business for All programmes to look at the way that letters are used by businesses to ensure that compliance is achieved. And things like making sure that the letters are, you know, short, sharp, to the point. And we can share details of that for you in terms of the activities that have happened. And again, just a quote from a business, this is a new business that started in an area. When I started my business, the first letter I received, I'm very proud, got my premises licence, and it said, here's your premises licence, but if you don't put it up, you're going to get fined. So it's just a bit of subtlety really around, you know, how those messages are conveyed to the businesses and how you develop relationships with them. And we do run courses around behavioural insights training, which actually looks at how you can get into how others tick and how you can work with them and how you can connect with them. So the biggest thing about Better Business is coordination. Part of the work that you can do around coordination is understanding how regulators work, how the business support providers work. And there are lots of activities that you can do around improving that and making that better. A common cry amongst businesses is about being passed pillar to post, having to go to lots of different places for information, and around, again, businesses about regulators having different objectives for them to do, which is because of regulation, but it's about how you convey that to the businesses. So just a really small practical example of something that was developed through Better Business for All. This is just a little A card which pulls together details of all the different regulatory functions for a business in one place, and particularly links that to the growth hubs, which I'll go into in a second. So again, regulators are good at this, accessible advice and support, but this is how accessible is it and what is the support needed by businesses. So one of the places where a lot of the Better Business for All programmes focus is around growth hubs. Growth hubs have websites where they pull together business support in an area. Now, I've looked at lots of growth hub websites, and where there isn't Better Business for All, regulators rarely feature on those websites. These are just a couple of examples of where they do. As those relationships deepen, there are programmes where we've worked to actually have growth hubs referring and signposting to regulatory services as part of holistic business support package. So one thing you could do here, if you're not involved in Better Business for All at the moment, is go back and look at your growth hub website, and you should be there. During COVID, we're offering links to health and safety mentors around COVID secure, around business restrictions, and you should be featuring on those websites. Better Business for All will help you to do that. So just some top tips here around what constitutes the recipe for success. First steps are about working out who you need to talk to, absolutely starting that conversation. Very quickly you realise that's common goals. It's all about economic growth and thriving businesses and actually not having non-compliant businesses. Learn a bit of the language around what businesses say. Businesses talk about offers. What's your offer as a regulator? Regulators have a unique selling point. They're a local, trusted source of advice. So you really should be shouting about that, and Better Business for All will help you do that through that structure. Have achievable action plans. Use your networks to get out there and find out who it is you need to have on the table. Have that high level buy-in. Embed the principles and have willing volunteers. There will be lots and lots of people in regulatory service who truly get this from day one, and they're the ones that can actually, with passion, push this one out. So we're here to help. OPSS, through our local delivery team, have regional coordinators across England and Wales. If you're interested in setting up Better Business for All in your locality, do contact us. And there is a small amount of funding which will support that. And we have a whole host of resources on gov.uk, which we can signpost you to. And there are opportunities for training through those funded programmes. So just very quickly, so I hand over to my colleague Paul. I'm just going to ask you this question. Do you think businesses are happy to challenge poor regulatory advice? And again, this is a bit of a light bulb moment for me. So I'm just going to give you a couple of scenarios. So I know this lady on this slide really, really well. This lady's got an alcohol off-licence, chocolates, and a sort of a tobacconist shop. It's a really small business, employs 3 people. It's quite low risk. There's no high risk food there at all. It's all wrapped. And many moons ago, this lady got a report from her local inspectors, 3 pages long, and it was asking her to lift Kit Kat, as the chocolate bars are available, off the bottom shelf because of the potential for rodent infestation in her shop, and also was asked to do a written health and safety risk assessment and to paint the floor throughout this entire shop premises to make sure it could be cleaned easily. So the big reveal is that's my sister, and this is several years ago, and I said to her, now look here, some of this stuff I think you should probably speak to your local authority about, because I don't think you need to do it. And to this day, and still is, absolutely adamant that's not going to happen, because she's really scared that there'll be repercussions. So I think, you know, even in my own family, I can't persuade a business that regulators are not there to impose lots of burdens on them. And finally, one thought before I hand over to Paul is that this is something which absolutely sums up the essence of Better Business for All during the recent challenging times that we had. And this is a quote from Catherine at Cambridge and Peterborough Trading Standards. And this is actually saying about the fact that where we have BBFA programmes, it was noticed during the early stage of COVID, and the ability to get things out to businesses and to work with businesses was where it absolutely has showed its true value. And I guess as time goes on, I think that will increase. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to Paul, where the technology is going to be interesting. Paul, are you there?
I am here, yes. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can. So run your slides for you, Paul. So I'll put the first one there. So you just give a nod.
Okay, will do. I've got an issue where I can't actually see my slides, so you can still see and hear me, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I was asked really to give an overview of our journey on BBFA, but it really got me thinking about you know, what BBFA means for the future to 2021 and beyond. If we can switch on to the next slide, please, Jackie. It doesn't take an expert to predict that we have got some really tough times ahead. We're going to go into a very deep recession. The long-term economic effects are going to affect both businesses and local authorities. That's us, that's the regulators as well. And we can, as a council, expect large shortfalls. In addition to that, we've of course got EU transition, and this will take place during a damaged economy. So for businesses, the outlook is pretty bleak, and you know, if we look at that from a regulatory point of view and think, well, if businesses are going to go out, are going to disappear and just go out of business, you know, that could have an effect on us. So we could take the view that we're all doomed, that this is all very, very bleak, and we're all going to be fighting for our jobs in future. Or if we move on to the next slide, please, Jackie, we could do what we normally do in these situations and seize the opportunity. And we have got opportunities here. And let's face it, local authorities need their local economies to be vibrant and successful. As I've said before, you know, we need our businesses to be operating to keep us in work. If we haven't got businesses to regulate, then we don't need regulators, and we're going to end up, you know, on the dole queue with everyone else. So there is an opportunity for us to seize. And what COVID has demonstrated in the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, sorry, for me in general, is just how confusing regulation can be for new and small businesses. They really do struggle with it. And in times of uncertainty, the person they normally always turn to for any support, for any help, is us, the regulators, the local authorities. We're not very good at promoting ourselves. You know, the reason they come to us is because we've got the expertise, and sometimes we don't recognise that. We are problem solvers. We can look at things, we can come up with compromises, and we can come up with solutions for businesses, and they really do appreciate that. And so we ought to use this opportunity to sell ourselves and think about how we can work better with businesses in the future, because evidence shows that businesses that are compliant are much more successful, that they tend to be a lot more fruitful, and working together and trusting each other can lead to economic growth and job creation in our local areas. If move on to the next slide, please, Jackie. So better business for all really is part of a bigger jigsaw. It's a much bigger picture, and it all stems really from the industrial strategy, which is a government document looking at the future of the UK and the economy. And the aim is that by 2030, the UK will become the country in the world for businesses to settle and to set up. Now, presumably, COVID hasn't stopped that from happening. That's still an aspiration for this government. That 2030, we will become that country where everyone wants to come. And what the industrial strategy does, it sets up a whole host of different tools that businesses and regulators can turn to. We can use the growth hubs to bring in both public and private sector partners together connect businesses to best support available from regulator and from the business support units as well. We move on to the next slide, please, Jackie. And so Better Business for All is just a small part of that wider outlook, that industrial strategy. And what it does effectively, it just brings the regulators and businesses together. And in Sussex, our Better Business for All group has brought together the East and West Sussex County Councils, trading standards and the fire and rescue from those councils. We've got 11 districts and boroughs in East and West Sussex. That's environmental health. And we've also got the business support groups in the Sussex Chamber of Commerce. We've got 2 growth hubs that go across Sussex. In the east, we've got the South East Business Hub, and in West Sussex, we've got the Coast Capital. So those are the organisations involved in the Sussex BBFA. We move on to the next slide, please, Jackie. And what we are is a one-stop shop for businesses. We've all got individual expertise. So if a business goes to a growth hub or to chamber looking for grants or loans in which they can grow their businesses, or if they want to start up a new business, the growth hub can then refer that business to the relevant departments within the county council or the borough council. If a business is wanting to start up and talking about advertising on the web, and the growth hub or the chamber can say, well, perhaps you need to speak to trading standards in county council, because they will give you a steer on what you need, what you can and cannot say in your advertising on your website. So you can see how working together we can produce this one-stop shop. Next slide, please, Jackie. So Sussex Better Business for All was formed in 2015, and initially it had buy-in from all the heads of service within all the districts and boroughs and the county councils within the county. Now, this is something that I need to bring up, because I think that we are still struggling as a result of what happened when the group first formed together. What we did, we put a group together, we put a group of individuals into a room, and unfortunately what we did, we didn't pick the right people. You've heard the saying that there are jacks that do and there's jacks that talk. And unfortunately, what we did, we had a room full of jacks that did a lot of talking and didn't actually do anything. And so initially, the group was set up and was rolling along for a good couple of months before someone spoke up and said, you know, what is this group actually doing? And certain heads of service within the county were saying, you know, we're sending people along to this group, but it's not actually achieving anything. And so some of the councils sort of withdrew their support, and we had to review the group and start again, and we lost valuable ground. And I still honestly believe because of the fact that we didn't set the group up right at the beginning, and we didn't put the right people together. So what you need to do is to think about what people you're going to include in the group, what their expertise is, and what do they bring to the table. What is the aim of the group? What are you hoping to achieve? What do you want to deliver? And you've got to get and do something pretty quick, because the group will soon lose momentum and people will become disengaged. So what you really need to do is to get an early goal. Set up a project, set something up that gives you a quick success, something that you can shout from the rooftops and say, look, this is what our Better Business for All group has done. This is what we've achieved. This is how we've helped the economy in our area. This is how we've supported our local business. And getting started up isn't as difficult as you would think. BAs and Ops do offer a whole host of support and resources. Although they haven't got the BBFA ambassadors anymore, they do have individuals that they can appoint to your group to get you up and start, get you ready. There are lots of BBFA templates and exemplar materials that you can adapt and use. And there is a lot of good stuff going on in other BBF groups throughout the UK. And what we've done, we've looked at some of the other groups, particularly places like Art and Kent and the Southwest, to see exactly what they're doing, what their business successes are, and looking to not reinvent the wheel, but stealing their ideas and utilising them, putting them to good use within Sussex. Next slide, please, Jackie. So what you need to do is, as a group, is get to know what your business needs are, community is. Sussex is quite a diverse county. We've got an international airport in Gatwick. We've got quite a few coastal local authorities. We've got quite a few unique and artisan businesses. We've got a lot of expertise there. And really, you need to have a look at what businesses are in your area and what sort of resources they might need. And as regulators, I think sometimes we come across as a bit arrogant because we tend to think we know what businesses need. We tend to think we know better than them, and we never really ask the question what they really want. And sometimes we think that regulation is the only thing in the world, the only thing that is important to everyone. It's important to us. We also think it's important to businesses as well, and that's not always the case. So it's a good idea to speak to your businesses early on, listen to their needs, and they'll tell you what they want. One of the first things that we did was that we put out a survey monkey, and it was a simple question we asked, and the question was, what keeps you awake at night? As a business operator, what are the concerns that you have? What stops you falling asleep and having a good night's sleep? And the answers we got back, the most common answer was, I worry about how I can grow my business. I've got it set up, it's ticking along, but I need it to grow. I need it to expand for me to actually be prosperous and make some money. That's what was keeping people awake at night. Not what have I got to do to comply with HACCP? What have I got to do to comply with the Health and Safety at Work Act? It's very different. Their needs were very different to what we thought that they wanted. So you need to ask those what they want. If we can have the next slide, please, Jackie. And along the way, when you set up, you will hit some hurdles, pitfalls, and one of our biggest hurdles is getting buy-in from some of our partner LAs. As I say, there are 11 authorities, districts and boroughs in Sussex, 13 if you count the 2 county councils as well. And we haven't got support from more than half of those local authorities. And as I said before, I think that we've struggled because of the early setup where we didn't get the right people. There's a lack of apathy, and a lot of authorities say that they don't have the resource to commit the Better Business for All. But I know that if you speak to some people in Sussex and you talk about Better Business for All, they just shrug their shoulders and say, well, you know, they don't really do anything. They haven't really achieved much. So you've got to be prepared to get out there and sell. And I'm getting a reputation of being a bit of a broken record because I turn up to all these different groups, the Food Safety Liaison Group and the Sussex Health and Safety Liaison Group and all the rest of it. And I talk to them about Better Business for All, about the advantages of being part of it and what it can offer. And it's a hard sell. I'm struggling. And the second biggest hurdle, and it's buy-in at senior level. We haven't really got any sort of anyone in senior level within the group from any local authority. And evidence from some of the other BBF groups, those that are being really successful at what they're doing, evidence suggests that buy-in from a senior management level is important. It's very important. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. Rest of our colleagues in districts and boroughs, and we're trying to get the ears of someone who's got influence at senior management level that can come into the group and start to dictate how things operate. As I said before, what you need to do is to set up a quick win, and once you do that, what you can't do is just bask in the success. You have to keep it going. Otherwise the momentum of the group will be lost. You've got to keep going. You've got to, once you achieve one success, you've got to go on and move to the next one very, very quickly. You've got to keep that momentum going. And the other thing that can happen, and which has happened to us in Sussex, is that you've got to consider what happens when some of the most prominent and active members of the group leave. Those members that were really, really keen on BBFA and getting it moving and the rest of it, what happens when they go? You've got to be prepared to either stand up to the plate yourself or get them replaced quickly with someone else. I can move on to the next slide, please, Jackie. So, as I've said before, BBFA is part of a jigsaw. it's part of the bigger picture, and we, it's there to signpost businesses to primary authority. So you bring primary authority into it. It's about working with your LEPs. It's about working with your growth hubs. It's about making business communities successful and prosperous, and making sure that at the end of the day, we as regulators got businesses out there that we can regulate. So thank you very, very much for listening. And if we can go on to the very last slide, please, Jackie. There are a couple of questions there, and those questions are: what resource materials would really help you if you were going to start off on your journey, BBFA? And what do you think the future looks like? I mean, I'm thinking it's going to look very bleak, but what are your thoughts on that? And do you have any top tips for better business for all? Thank you very much.
So thanks ever so much, Paul. I hope that gives you sort of a flavour of the trials and the tribulations and the successes of a programme, a really successful programme. I know there are a few people on the call, but it's very quiet. I just wonder if anybody wants to chip in or have any comments at all. Otherwise, it'll be a short session. I've asked a few questions, but I'm not sure I'm there. So I've got Ellie here. Yes, hi Ellie. Do you want to speak? Are you there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering, I'm part of Allerdale Borough Council in Cumbria. We've got 5 borough councils as well as the county council. We're looking to do this just by ourselves at the moment for just Allerdale businesses. And I was just wondering if that still works, or you think that you should include other borough councils or county council at the same time?
So I'll start, and perhaps Paul can chip in if that's okay. I would say that your added value is from working across the region.
Yeah. So
because you do have then that support from the business support providers in your area, and one of the things I said there is the fact that businesses talk about being passed from pillar to post. Part of the successful Better Business programme is getting to know what those others do in their area. Yeah. So you can certainly apply the principles. I think that's absolutely, I mean, why would you not want to do that? Because they're the fundamentals of dealing with businesses. But what I would offer to you, Ellie, because I recognise your name actually. Yeah. I'm happy to meet with you post-meeting because Cumbria's in my region.
Yeah, perfect.
Perhaps we can have a chat about what we can do. So I do know, and I don't think they're on the call, I do know that the growth hubs in Cumbria are keen to work with regulators.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So I think there's scope to do a Better Business for All programme there. So Paul, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I obviously mirror what you're saying, but it's a good place to start. If you want to start with your own businesses in your own area, and get it up and running and get some success, and then you can demonstrate to your neighbouring boroughs and to the county, look, this works. BBFA does work. Well, why don't you come and join us? You can contribute, and you can make it much more valuable to the businesses to log into.
Yeah. Really good to see you. It's positive that you want to do something. So I'm more than happy to have a chat with you outside of this meeting, see if we can get something. At the end.
That's great. I'll drop you an email, Jackie. That's great. Thank you.
And there was Paula, and Paula said that she's had some sort of difficulties in her area around getting things going. So you don't have to. Paula, do you want to expand on that?
Yes, hello. Yeah, it's just so I think, my managers had discussions with the BBFA when it started up, and I think there was a mutual agreement that they would refer people to us if needed, but it's never developed more than that. We hardly ever hear from them. Every now and again we do send some information to them, but I don't think that, or there's no evidence that they refer things to us or ask us for our advice. So it was just wondering how we could get that going, really. I mean, as Paul said, maybe the wrong people have had previously, and whether we need to revisit that, and now I've got the responsibility for it, perhaps start something up again.
sounds really good. I mean, Paul, do you want to answer to respond to Paula?
Yeah, I think probably, you know, what my suggestion would be is to look for like-minded people in neighbouring boroughs, or you know, certainly in other business support areas as well. Yeah. See whether or not, you know, that there is the appetite. And I think, as I said earlier, if you can get yourself a success, some sort of win, which can, you know, you can use to demonstrate that, you know, this tool works. I think that's the way forward. But I share your frustrations, because, you know, sometimes I feel I'm banging my head against a brick wall when I speak to people in other authorities. They just don't seem to get it, and it is a hard sell, and I do appreciate that. But you know, there's safety in numbers. So if you can get other like-minded people on board and have a united front, if you like, I think that's the best place to start.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. I think, I mean, Paula, you know, in my previous life, you know, I was one of the early adopters of Better Business for All, and it's a hard slog, but yeah. There will be people out there that absolutely will be people who get this and run with it. From, you know, from day one, there will be willing volunteers, and that's the secret, I think, and that's what builds the momentum. And coming back to Ellie's point about going alone, I guess, as Paul said, it starts somewhere, you know, and then just build that momentum. And success brings people with it. I mean, that's a bit cheesy to say that, but it's absolutely true. I mean, some of the examples at the moment, I mean, if collaboration wasn't important at this point in time, when will it ever be important? You know, with the stuff that's going on around COVID-19, there have been some really strong examples of things and activities that programmes have done around the COVID agenda. So COVID toolkits, COVID signposting, and you know, where those relationships are there, it has been easier, you know, and that has been said, you know, across the board really. So yeah, you know, start the conversation. It's so frustrating. I think, you know, I know how brilliant this programme is and how it works, how effective it is, and once you've got those relationships, stuff just comes from there. So another example, if you've been on one of the earlier sessions, is around EU transition, and now some of the BBFA programmes quite rightly are stepping up around, you know, how they can support businesses and how they can pull in the regulatory part of that as well. So yeah, loads out there really that can be done. But yeah, more than happy to talk to you again to see if we can try and help you facilitate some stuff locally. And as Paul said, and I've said, you know, that high level, have you got a champion, somebody at sort of a senior level, you know, that supports what you want to do?
And the other thing I would add, and maybe I'm going to get a kick under the table from Jackie for
I can't reach you, Paul.
The sort of carrot I've tried to use is that there is funding. Is that, you know, the BBFA do put funding up. There is regional funding, and there is funding for various pilots, which we've managed to secure some funding. And in these days of you know, financial hardship, you know, there's no better carrot to wave in front of someone than saying, you know, we can get some money for this. You know, if we adopt this project, if we take BBF forward, you know, we can access funding from the regional funding pots. So, you know, there is funding and resources available.
And no kick into the table at all, Paul. Please use the funding. It is there. Every region has a pot of funding, and it's kind of use it or lose it, like any funding. You know, you know what it's like in local authorities. It doesn't stay there. You know, you lose it at the end of the year. So it's there. It isn't huge amounts of money, but it might be just enough to kickstart something that you want to do. So no, definitely not a kick. A pat on the back for that, Paul, for reminding everybody that there is something out there. And if the funding contributes towards simplification of regulation, that's fantastic. And you know, programmes have used it around cultural training, you know, around commercialisation, which is something you might have dipped into earlier today. So a lot of the stuff that you'll be dipping into during this week will be probably stuff that started off from a small funding pot. So, you know, please do access it. So anybody else got anything they want to raise? Don't be afraid. Good, bad, ugly, we don't mind. We can take it, can't we, Paul? Okay, well I mean that has kind of neatly brought us to the sort of the Q2 mark. So I hope you did find that useful. I couldn't have possibly condensed Better Business for All into a short session like this. There is so much, you know, involved in what a successful programme looks like, but I do hope it just gave you a little bit of the flavour of what the building blocks are. What I'd be really interested in, we have got a huge number of resources on gov.uk. What we don't know is how people use those, if they use them, do they find them useful, what they would like to see there. So I would absolutely really love some feedback on what's there. And, you know, if you're starting from scratch, and I guess because we've got Ellie and we've got Paula, you know, what would you like to see? What would really help you to get things going, something that would really help? So after the meeting any time, and Paul, I'm sure you'd be happy to take, you know, sort of comments post-meeting when you, in terms of what you're doing. So thank you very much for attending the session. Hope you have a nice rest of your afternoon, and if you've got opportunity to dip in tomorrow, I hope that's helpful to you as well. Lovely to meet you, albeit on the other side of cameras, and apologies for the strange thing that happened halfway through the slides today. Lovely to speak to you. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Did it go too badly?